Hi, and welcome to Behind the Briefcase. Today is a very special episode, and we're delighted to be bringing this to you. So, if you are someone that likes a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, this is one where you'll want to sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. I think there'll be a lot of powerful stuff said today, so you may want a pen and piece of paper as well to take some notes down. So why am I saying all this? Well, today we're joined by Paula McGowan. And for those of you that don't know who Paula is, just let me enlighten you a little bit. So I want you to picture this. So how many of you have ever wanted to make a change in the world for the better? Most of us, I would say, we've all wanted to make that change, make a difference. But the next stage is how many of you have taken that thought and campaigned relentlessly to see that change happen? And if you were asking yourself honestly, that's a bit where you probably go, no, not me. Because sometimes it's easier to quit than it is to actually strive on. Now, our guest today, through a grief stricken moment, which resulted in the tragic loss of her 18-year-old son, she somehow miraculously campaigned and managed to get UK policy and legislation changed. Now, in my eyes, that makes her a hero in any time of history. So, for me to get the opportunity to sit and speak to what I would class as a modern day hero, and she may not see herself as that, but history will show it. I think it gives us the opportunity to really hear what it took to do that. This is a mother who would not take no for an answer. So all you mums out there, think about that. I was not taking no for an answer, and ensured that Oliver's death would be a catalyst to ensure that no mother would have to stand in her shoes, asking the question, why? Paula, welcome to Behind the Briefcase.
Hello, hi Paul. I'll quickly add, I am definitely not a hero. I'm just an everyday person, same as everybody else.
I think you'll find a lot of people at the end of this will form a different opinion, Paul, because your story is quite miraculous and how you've managed to achieve it. A lot of people will take heart that it's possible, that you can do it. I want to start, if I can. I think it's very important that you tell us a little bit around Oliver, and in particular, those final days leading up to his passing.
Gosh, it's where to start with Oliver, just a normal teenage kid, just like anybody else's family, really. But Oliver's journey starts at the beginning, when he was first born. He's born premature, tiny little baby, and he develops meningitis. And as a result of that, he had a stroke. It was miraculous, really, because he survived against all odds. He really did. We were told we weren't going to be taking him home. He had the last rites, all of those things. And this kid, this tiny baby, his strength really shone through. And we did bring him home after, oh my God, it must have been quite a few months. In fact, we were a military family, really difficult time for us. But he had this stroke, and that left him with, it left him with epilepsy. It left him with a mild learning disability, later on a diagnosis of autism, and then also cerebral palsy, but hemiplegia, so affected down one side. We got told he'd never walk or talk or do anything. In actual fact, Oliver more than achieved. He played for England's FA development football squads.
Wow.
He was a Paralympian, and he did go on to pass some of his exams at school. But these seizures, so they weren't tonic-clonic, they were focal seizures, not always easy for people that didn't understand them to see what was happening. And they caused him anxiety, they really did. He was aware of it, he was very aware of himself anyway. He wants to be the same as everybody else. But epilepsy, that last year of his life, we had to bring him to the children's hospital having seizures, exactly what we've been told to do. And because he was scared, they gave him, first of all, they gave him an antidepressant medication, which he didn't need. He wasn't depressed. A really happy kid, couldn't wait to get up. Everybody loved him. It was that kid. Changing him was terrible, caused lots more seizures. Known side effects of that medication. Why on earth give somebody medication that's going to increase seizures when you've brought them to hospital having seizures? And then we had to bring her back to hospital because having more seizures. And that was the first time that an antipsychotic medication was given to Oliver. So it's this year before the final event. And I talk about this because the knock-on effect, it had an impact on what happened and why decisions were made. He's given, I won't mention names of medications because I don't want people to judge in that way or think I need to get my child off that medication, because some people need them. But in Oliver's case, he did not have a mental health condition. He has a learning disability. He is autistic, but he's got epilepsy. He's suddenly biting his skin, trying to pull his hair out. We'd never seen anything like it in our lives. He was terrified, and they weren't learning from what they were doing. They were adding more and more. Long story short, they didn't know what to do in the end. And we kept saying, it's the drugs. We know it's the drugs that's causing the change to Oliver. Long last, they listened to us. But this was after a lot of suffering on Oliver's part. Took the antipsychotics away, and Oliver returns absolutely back to his normal self. Unbelievably so. He's discharged back home. There's much more to this story as I go on, because he has more seizures. He goes back. They do exactly the same thing again. The harm they cause is awful, but everything goes back to normal. And then he has to go to an adult hospital having seizures. This time we're prepared. We brought a hospital passport. He had letters from those previous hospitals saying he was intolerant to all forms of antipsychotic medications. Oliver himself had made an advanced verbal decision in keeping with the law, saying he wasn't to be given those medications. Met a wonderful neurologist in the A&E that night. He intubated Oliver. He wants to know why he was having these seizures, because they weren't stopping. Next day, 2 days in, Oliver developed pneumonia. So he was on life support. He's now got double pneumonia. Never had a chest infection. He was so fit and healthy. Then we met the neuropsychiatrist, and we'd met her for just 2 10-minute appointments in the community. And it's on record. We'd actually said, she's got no understanding of Oliver. She's making decisions, but she doesn't understand him. And she talked about giving him an antipsychotic. And like a child, we were trying to show her these letters and saying, no, you mustn't give them. We don't give permission. Oliver's made an advanced verbal decision. And that night she administered it. She prescribed it against everybody's wishes. And over the next few days, we saw changes in Oliver. So he was intubated, like we said, but his face started looking blue. His eyes were all puffed up. And we kept saying to the doctors, something's going badly wrong. They kept saying, he's fine, he's fine. They wasn't listening, but his temperature started rising to 42 degrees. And they wouldn't give him any medication for that, because they said they didn't want his liver to be affected. So nothing was done. And we kept saying, something's going badly wrong. We can see it. 2 days later, they sent him for an MRI of his brain. And when they came back, they told us it was so badly swollen, it was bulging out the base of his skull. He had emergency surgery. He had a shunt fitted. Those few days were we're actually in the anniversary of it now, as we lead into his death. They were horrific. You know, we were sort of like, we were hoping he was going to regain some sort of consciousness. They were showing us the scans of his brain, and there was nothing. There was nothing there. It was horrible. And then they actually was put on to turn the machines off. Then they wanted to close the shunt off that they'd had to insert to drain the fluid. And, you know, one of the things Oliver had said was, I'm not going to let anybody mess with my brain. Don't let anyone mess with my brain. And they wanted to close the shunt because they said his brain would then fill completely with fluid and it would kill him off. It's awful, but that is the truth. It's harsh. And we wouldn't allow that. There is no way on this earth. When they turned the machines off, they said he wouldn't be able to breathe for himself. He would die quite quickly. We looked at organ donation because Oliver was a giver, and he wouldn't die. He was breathing for himself. We kept saying, I remember begging, he wants to live. He's telling us he wants to live. And they just said it's all primitive. And anyway, the medication had all stopped at that point. Pneumonia had been allowed to rebuild. And he did. He died on Armistice Day, the 11th of November. His death was a horrific death. And we had to stand there and watch every moment of it. You know, and we talk about dying, don't we? And we talk, and you know, people don't realize that process. For him, we watched him almost jerking off the bed, having clonic-tonic seizures, which he'd never had. We saw his eyes open, and we saw when they were putting cannulas into the ulna, the wrist area, when they go straight into one of those veins. I remember his whole body jerking up in pain, and he couldn't talk. But that silent scream, they were saying his actions were all primitive. He was in pain. His death was horrible, absolutely horrible, which is exactly why I fight for the way I do.
Paula, I mean, to have been in your shoes at the time would be horrendous for anyone, but I think there's going to be some people listening to this, mothers, fathers, who are going to go, it may have not been a similar situation, but they've not been listened to. And the listening to part is that you knew Oliver better than anybody else. So when you were talking about you could see the changes within him and you knew something was wrong, that's the part where you've got medical people looking at someone more as a subject and not as a human being. In the human being part is where your motherhood kicks in and says, this isn't him, something's wrong. And it must have been awful. You must have felt like you were screaming at a brick wall at times.
Honestly, it was awful. And then that goes back into the children's hospital because, you know, when I said he'd reacted so badly to those medications, I knew because I'd picked him up from his college, which was an hour's drive away. He's having seizures. They'd called us. And I'm taking him to the children's hospital because obviously he's still a child at that point. And I'm able to have conversations with him in the mini car. At that time, I weighed 7.5 stone. And in and out of seizures, it's perfectly normal conversations. He'd gone into hospital, they'd given this antipsychotic medication, and the changes. And I knew that the only change was those medications. I even took myself up to the pharmacy to go and get a list of the medications they'd given him so I could read the adverse reactions. And everything I read was what I was seeing in Oliver, and they just wouldn't listen. And it was only when they couldn't find a psychiatric bed for him they decided to listen to us. So that's back in the children's hospital. So all of that went on. But remember, all of that suffering for Oliver, because, you know, I'm skipping around it. It was really horrific. He kept apologising as well. He knew what was happening. There's times where he went into an ocular gyrate crisis where your eyes roll up. It's as a result of too much antipsychotic medication. And he's left, you know, everything I say can be backed up with evidence, by the way. I've got the photographs and all of that. It's all documented. He's left like that for 6 hours because they thought he was making it up. But it is this stonic reaction. You cannot move. After 6 long hours when he hadn't changed, we thought he was having a seizure. We didn't know what we were looking at. After 6 long hours, they gave him procyclidine, which took 15 seconds to work. She could have given that at the start of that reaction. And that awful behaviour towards parents continued right into the next hospital and into the next hospital. And that ignorance and arrogance cost Oliver his life. He paid the ultimate price every single step of the way because of the suffering and all of the other things along that journey. You know, like I said, people just hear Oliver's story, but they hear the end result of the death of Oliver. They don't always hear about the suffering that went on before. And this is a normal everyday kid that's just gone into hospital having seizures. If Oliver didn't have labels attached to him, and I know I'm going off a little bit what you've said, if he didn't have its labels of a learning disability and being autistic, he would never have been treated in the way he was. Definitely not.
I mean, that was a question that I actually had further on down the line was, to me, there's a bit of a concern. One of the reasons why I want to speak to you, that your name and Oliver's name just become titles. And actually, there's a full backstory here to the reason as to why we've got to where we've got to today. But we'll come on to that as we go along. I want to know, I mean, you're at this moment in time, you're going through such pain and grief. But at some point, you've managed to take that and say, no, this isn't right. And this is following, you know, the death of your son. I'm going to campaign for change. I'm going to do something different. People are going to hear this story. I mean, what triggered that? At what point did you think, no, this is not good enough?
I think so. I was quite ignorant in lots of ways. I hadn't realised that we were losing 1,400 people with a learning disability every single year due to inequality of their health and care needs. They were all dying avoidable deaths. And Oliver was just one of them.
Just one?
He's one of 1,400 every single year. I had absolutely no idea about that at all. Totally ignorant. Because we're living this normal life with my boy going to play for England FA at the, you know, during the week. Yeah. He's doing really, really well. We're a military family. And I suppose in some ways, you know, it sounds awful. We're living this middle-class family life. I suppose we're in a bubble. So when this happened to Oliver, I thought everybody would be up in arms that this had happened to him. And then I can't quite recall how the journey just before the inquest, how I was becoming aware. And it was during Oliver's inquest when the really excellent neurologist that we've met in the A&E department, he was asked to understand why he didn't make reasonable adjustments for Oliver in the A&E. Why did he go straight to intubation? And he said, I've heard of them, but I don't really know what they are. And it was like a punch in the face moment for me, because I thought, that's not right and that's not fair. It's not right that our medics and our social care staff, health and care staff, it dawned on me that they weren't being given the right training to support people like Oliver, who are scared and frightened, especially when they're compromised because they're having seizures. They weren't being given the right skills to do that. And I just honestly, I really thought that was wrong. 80% of my family members are clinicians of one sort or another. And I know the health and care staff go into this job to do it the right way. They want to help and support people like Oliver. They go into the caring profession to care, but most, I would say 99.9% of health and care staff want to do the right thing. I think it's disgraceful for the likes of Oliver and so many other people with a learning disability, autistic people, that they are being failed in that way. But also our health and care staff are also being failed. It's wrong. It's not fair that they're not being given the right skills. We would not expect anybody to go and fix a car if they are not a trained mechanic to do so. Why do we expect our health and care staff to go and support people in crisis when they're not given the right training to do so? And that's where the fire remains in my belly and my heart, because it's wrong. It's wrong. And this is where all of Oliver's campaign and his training comes from. I don't know whether I'm jumping ahead by saying this. I was also adamant that we learn directly from autistic people and people with a learning disability. Now, this might be controversial. I'm a woman. A man can never understand, so a gynecologist will never understand what it feels like for a woman to be maybe, I don't know, having a period. Of course you don't. And just, in turn, we will never understand what it's like for a male to have prostate cancer or something like that. We are not males. We can understand and we can empathise, but you don't really know. And we must never take the voices away from these communities. And they can speak very, very well for themselves. They can tell us exactly how best to help and support them. So I was adamant about that as well. I was adamant, Oliver's voice had been silenced. It hadn't been heard. And there is no way on this earth that I will allow those communities' voices to be silenced, not in Oliver's training, not in any other training, to do it then.
I think a lot of people, including myself here, is going to fully agree with that. I mean, my field, if I was looking at a field of expertise, is slightly different, because it sits within dementia with the elderly. And the amount of times I have turned around and said, you're not listening to the person. They're still a person. They still have a voice. So every human being has the opportunity to either voice their opinions, and that can be non-verbal, verbal, but there's feelings, there's emotions, there's everything that makes up the perfect human, which we all are. So completely, I get it. And I think care staff, and I'm going to talk because I started off as a care worker. Care staff, it's not about reading a PowerPoint, or it's not about doing an e-learning course. It's about, to learn, we have to understand, accept, and empathize with the situation and motivate ourselves to want to make a difference. And in the same way that if you sat down with someone who lived through World War II or read the book on World War II, the person that sat down with the person from World War II will leave that completely different person to the person that read the book, because it's no longer a name, it's a person, which is the key thing. So I agree with you.
If we want to learn, we have to learn directly from the source of what it's about, the topic. And, you just mentioned elderly and dementia. Elderly people are also autistic and may well have an intellectual disability, dementia. Yeah. We talk about behaviours. They're just communicating a need. Anybody that's distressed, they are trying to communicate a need, giving our staff the right support and skills to be able to actually step back and question themselves and say, what am I looking at here? What is this person trying to tell me? And look at ourselves and say, am I actually making a difference, or am I making things worse? And it's about listening to that person. Exactly what you've just said. It doesn't have to be verbal. Just watch the person, watch how they're behaving, watch how they're interacting. Your behaviour will impact them greatly.
Absolutely. I just want to sort of your own professional career was as an early years practitioner, working within a similar field of neurodivergent children. So before what was occurring with Oliver, particularly as we moved into the last year or so, could you see signs around you that there was problems within the healthcare services where people weren't being listened to? Or were you, the reason why I'm asking that is because I think a lot of people, they're not what we class as foveal enough to look around them and see what's going on because their life is directed, focused towards them. And you were a professional in this field, and that's why I'm asking the question: Did you ever foresee this happening?
Absolutely not. Oliver had always been under the hospital his whole life. So same hospital in the children's, we'd had really good experiences until he became a teenager that last year of his life. Things changed. As an educator, I always, and I moved all around the country because being military, husband's in the Air Force, I always worked with good practitioners. So I didn't see the discrimination that I'm seeing in the SEND communities, the schools and so on. So I wasn't seeing any of that whatsoever. We were all doing our jobs, working with these children. And I've got to put my hand up myself and say, I was actually ignorant as well. I look at my language and the narrative I used to use, I'd say an autistic person. Oliver had autism because I was just ignorant. Actually, when I look back, even I'd had all kinds of training. I had, honestly, if you look at my CV, I've got training as long as your arm on autism and learning disability, but it was always the same thing, the triad of impairment. Didn't give us any detail. We didn't go into any detail or how best to support. It was that very clinical medical narrative. Fortunately, like I said, the children within the schools I worked in, they were fully supported. Oliver, again, we were lucky. We wrote it was his education healthcare plan. Oliver had a full 32 and a half hours. We fought for it, but we didn't have to fight hard because I had the support of medics support me during that time. We even got to write it ourselves. So I didn't have that experience that a lot of SEND families have, but I'm certainly awake to it now. Even now, the school I work in, it's a mainstream school, but they really embrace children with additional needs and they're fully supported. So whether I'm just lucky that I've gone into education settings where kids are really looked after. And I've got to say, hand and heart, I do mean it. Kids are looked after. I do see an awful lot that are medicated, both in England and in where I am now. Yeah, it's not my thing. But anyway, that's another subject altogether. Yeah, so I think for me, I think that's what it is. The campaign's been successful, so successful, because it started with ignorance. I didn't know what the barriers I would face.
And I think that's what I was trying to get at. When you mentioned that you've turned up to the inquest, your expectation is probably that this is an isolated case, and then all of a sudden you discover the number 1400, and you start to sit. I'd imagine you sit there and go, "There's 1400s of me out there right now, thinking they're isolated to this individual case." When this is systematic, when you start to talk about those sort of numbers, is that the sort of thing that drove you on and said, "I got to actually campaign for this change, and I've got it." It'd be easy to turn around and say, doing it in the name of Oliver, but do you feel like you were doing it in the name of all?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. I always feel Oliver's driving me because I didn't intend to do this. It's really quite strange. Things seem to happen that put me into situations. So before the inquest, I'd actually been approached by hospitals and things like that. So I was going into hospitals. I wasn't getting paid for any of this. I'd go all around the country, going into hospitals, universities, telling Oliver's story. I spoke at the launch of Stopping the Over-Medication campaign. I spoke at the first one of that. MenCap was involved with Oliver's inquest, and I was becoming more and more aware of what was going on. And then it was during the inquest. So I was aware of the deaths at that point, but it was the smack in the face moment was when that really nice guy, when he'd said, and I really had a lot of time for him, when he'd said he didn't really know what reasonable adjustments were. And I honestly believe that all health and social care staff knew more than me. Remember, I've just said I had a list as long as your arm on training. I was trained every single year about autism and learning disability and lots of other things. I thought they knew more than I did about those subjects, and they didn't. And we moved to Australia. My husband, like I said, is in the Air Force. We're walking through the bush, didn't have a stick of furniture, we're living on boxes. I said to Tom, I'm just walking through these trees, and I said, I've got to start a parliamentary petition. And he goes, oh, here we go again. And do you know, I wasn't a government-minded person. I wasn't into politics in any way. I wasn't on social media at all. But I just knew instinctively it had to be a government petition. And I started this petition and got it onto Twitter. When you say 100,000 signatures, you had to have 100,000 signatures. If you say it fast enough, it doesn't sound that many. Do you know, it was so hard, so hard. But I managed to get something like 70,000. Every single signature I responded to. I joined 90 different Facebook groups for disability. I was on Twitter, I was on Facebook, LinkedIn. LinkedIn came later. Like I said, I was naive to social media. And from that, I started engaging Caroline Dinenage, who was the health minister at the time. And she really took me under her wing. She was amazing. Yeah, she was good. How I managed to find Caroline, I don't know. Things seem to happen. Like I said, I'm sure whatever you believe in spirituality, he's definitely
guiding you.
Things, honestly, the times I've said, I don't know what to do. What do I need to do, Oliver? Tell me. Caroline Dinenage really embraced me. She was having me into Westminster. She was having meetings with me. At the time, Jane Cummings was the Chief Nursing Officer of England. She was having meetings with me. Ray James, Health and Social Care, so social care. I was meeting with him. When Jane Cummings left, Ruth May became the Chief Nursing Officer of England. Obviously, social care does come into this because obviously a lot of it is funded by them. They were really looking after me. It's their Norman Lamb. So I was involved with Norman, who's fantastic. Also Barbara Keeley. So it was government from different parties were really taking on Oliver's story.
Did they approach you? So were they aware of what had happened at the inquest and they've approached you, or have you gone out to them?
So there was a media coverage. No, I don't recall going out to them, if I'm honest. Things seemed to happen. So the media really followed this closely. So when I'd taken to Twitter, there was a police investigation in Bristol, and other families had approached me and told me which journalists to go to. So this is how naive I was. Yeah. And these journalists really picked up Oliver's story, and it all sort of like escalated from there. The right people. And I obviously found out who the Chief Nursing Officer of England was, and I must have contacted them. I can't remember. You could remember. I'm in the midst of grief at that time. Caroline Dinenage. I must have found out who the health minister was, and must have written and tried to engage with them. And for me, I say I'm so grateful. I don't know how it's happened, but they embraced me. We've had 5 health ministers since Caroline, and every single one of them have given me so much time. They've met with me countless times. A few have given me their personal mobile numbers. Gillian Keegan in particular, she really embraced me. She really supported me. I've got her personal number. Honestly, people don't realise what goes on behind the scenes and how much help they give. I know Gillian went into every care home to look at what was happening with autistic people and people with a learning disability to see what she could do to make changes there. But obviously, politics is far bigger than the health minister. People don't realise what's going on.
I mean, in terms of that, we're 9 years on, aren't we? Or we're coming up to the anniversary. I'm sure you'd have wanted to have seen change happen a lot quicker, because we're now in the frost where we've seen legislation change. It is getting mandated. The rollout of the training is going to happen across all platforms of health and social care. In terms of that, when you're mentioning about how these politicians have continuously corresponded with you, I think that's music to the ears, because it would have been very easy for them to go, oh, enough time has passed that this is older news. Now, part of that will be down to your continuous relentlessness of not letting that go. But 9 years to get from there to here, there must have been moments at that time where you thought, I need to stop this. This is affecting everything, because it's just the amount. I don't think you are doing justice to the amount of work that you would have done. It would have taken over your life.
It really has. So I was working in the daytime. When I said things happen for a reason, as in moving to Australia, I couldn't have conducted this campaign if I was living in England. I would have either had to do the campaign or give up my job. Right. So I've been able to work in the daytime. So the work involved, like you've just said, I do my job in the daytime. I come home and then I will have meetings with either Department of Health and Social Care, politicians, NHS England, or I'm presenting Oliver's story to different conferences, social care, healthcare, every night. And then on top of that, I'm on social media campaigning for that change. Now, what people don't realise, in 2021, I was diagnosed with cancer as well. So I've got advanced melanoma. So I've been going through, I had a whole year of treatment then. Do you know, I would be in that chair and I would be having the IV infusions of that treatment. I would be on social media while that was going on. I can remember going into surgery, going up, just waiting to go to be, put to sleep. I can remember families approaching me, and I was actually on my phone trying to help families just before they actually, before I was actually anaesthetized. So anyway, so I did a whole year of that. I would be having that treatment. I would come home, and I would then be at that time, it was NHS England with Oliver's training. So it was all of those things, skills for care, lots of meetings. Then I've had a recurrence of that cancer again. It's come back. Melanoma does that. It's horrible. So I've had surgery with that. I'm again in treatment. I look at myself sometimes, and I'm doing all these meetings, and I'm doing what I'm doing with you today. And I can see the physical changes in me. I can see I look more tired than I ever did before. But I will never give up. I will never give up on this, because it's too important. It's too important to the communities I'm fighting for, but it's also too important to the staff that I'm fighting for, because I genuinely, whether people agree with me or not, I genuinely believe that our staff deserve training like this as well. I really feel strongly that they need to have the right skills to do that. And, having a training that's just tick box, that's not of the standard that Oliver's is. And like I said, it's gone from 2018 to when it started actually properly to where we are now. And all those years and all those evaluations, we know that this training works. But I think our staff deserve that. I honestly do. And I will keep fighting for that. I don't care about my health in that way. I'll get the treatment and all the other stuff that I'm getting. You guys are far more important than that. Oliver's training and the care of autistic people and the care of those with a learning disability is far greater than me. It's far greater than Oliver. And that's where that drive, it's doing the right thing. It really is about doing the right thing. And when I hear people whinging, and I will say it, and there are a few, I did read some horrible stuff recently on social media that was brought to my attention, anonymous. It's nasty, vile at times towards me personally. And initially you become despondent and you lose that bit of fight, but then you realise they're the ones that need to change. They're the ones when we talk about culture, they're the ones that you have to keep going for, because they're the ones that are causing harm.
Paula, how important for you is it to have a support network around you? Because those moments in time, because there will be, haters is probably the wrong word, but they hate what it is that you're trying to achieve, whether that's because it will have a financial impact on them, or whether it's going to be timely and towards what it is they do, or they believe that they're already doing enough. So you're always going to have those people. And they will then turn this into, I've no doubt, that you need to just, all right, you got your policy changed, now go away and live the rest of your life. But you won't go away. So how do you've just mentioned about when they come at you, because they can only come at you personally because you are this training. You are the person that's campaigned about this relentlessly. What does the likes of your husband say to you when you're dealing with that sort of pushback, if you like, towards yourself, or your other children? Have they always been in support of what you're trying to do?
They are. So I keep my children out of it, but my husband's very much on side. So he's in the background, but he very much supports me. So, but also the communities, I, like I said, I mentioned that on Reddit a few weeks ago, last week actually, not that long ago. And it's at a time that's painful, because all those times that I mentioned about Oliver, that period, we're in that period now of Oliver dying. And it was actually one of the communities that brought that to my attention, because I'm not on that platform really. I've got an account, but I don't use it. And they surround themselves, they pull themselves around me. So it's virtually, and they'll come to me and they'll be saying, no, take no notice, you're doing the right thing. And they build me up. But also people, lots of doctors in the background are doing this as well. Lots of social care workers, they're in the background and they'll send me the private messages and they'll be saying, just ignore it, Paula. These are people without a face. These are anonymous. These are cowards. Keep going. We need you. And, you keep that fire in your belly to keep going. So I don't know these people in real life, but they're there. And I know that I only have to put something out on social media and you can feel the support. So it's come from people like yourself. You know, everybody's there really. And they're just the minority. And you have to tell yourself, they're the minority. This is why you're doing what you're doing. The people that don't want to come on that journey of change, that don't see the real reason, because of course, life is more important than money. And you know, of course, you'll get people that are pragmatically and correctly saying, we've only got so much money. But this, in reality, isn't a lot of money. It isn't a lot of money. And there's better ways of actually rolling out Oliver's training, which we can talk about later. There are better ways of doing it that makes it much more sustainable. So those people that want to complain, want to see the negative, they don't want to see how things can be done better. But we've got to bring them on that journey. You know, it's about working together. I've always said Oliver's training, Oliver's story, it's not about blame. It's not about pointing fingers. We've got to bring everybody on that journey, and we've got to make it business as usual. It's got to become normal. You know, and people complain, don't they? They say, oh, any other training's just online. Well, actually, 1,200 debts. This is just the learning people with learning disability debts. The autistic debts are not featured in that number, by the way. They deserve better, and we've got to find better ways of doing that. Oliver's training's not everything, by the way. It's only the start.
And I think that's the most important part when we move on to it. But just listening to everything that you've said, you know, something just struck me as I was listening. Two things actually. One is I've worked in health and social care since the tender age of 17 years old. I've been fully involved in it. So as an aging person now, it's a lot of years. I was ignorant, probably even up to today. That little bit of ignorance in me, you know, to have just heard the name, know a bit about the background of the story, but just listening to you speak, you cannot not get emotional. You cannot not buy into it. And I think that probably drives the reason why you are saying, no, lived experience has to be present. You have to feel it.
We've got to learn directly from them.
Yeah.
You know, I know the first part of Oliver's training is an e-learning.
Yeah.
That is for staff who are not public facing. If we want to learn and we want to change and want to make a difference, it's got to be face to face, and it's got to be directly from lived experience. It has to be directly from people with a learning disability, autistic people. We can't have people stand in for them.
I think the second part that sort of like got to me was, it's kind of like trying to put a positive on something with the work that you've done, is that in the name of Oliver and because of your relentless campaigning, I wonder how many lives have already been saved.
Do you know, Paul, this sounds awful and it sounds like big-headedness in a way. So many families are contacting me and they're saying that they now feel that they're able to advocate for their own kids better, for their own children. They're now speaking up more. And because they mention Oliver's story and because he's known, people are listening. So health and social care staff, they are now listening to what's going on. People from those communities, so autistic people, definitely people with a learning disability, they're now speaking up for themselves so much more. And all of those emails, you know, I could share them with permission. The feedback from staff has been outstanding, and I've started sending everything because there's a longitudinal study going on. I send all of that back now. People saying how they're going to change, how they do things going forward, and they keep in mind Oliver's story when they're faced with a situation. They're now questioning their own unconscious bias, which, you know, we've all got it. We're all human beings. I've definitely got it. I'll be the first to put my hand up. But it's making people just stop and think a little bit more than they might have done previously. So I do know, and that's what keeps me going. If it wasn't making a difference, what is the point?
Absolutely.
Especially when, you know, I am tired. I'm getting more and more tired. It's making a difference. And it's those voices from those communities, but also definitely from the staff. Because if it wasn't making a difference to the staff, that would be heartbreaking. But it is. But
this change has got to be so cemented and kept within legislation, policy, and how we move forward, that even after, you know, you're gone and I'm gone, Paula, and others have gone, that it doesn't just fall to the wayside. This is a change for the future in how we move forward. And I think we are using the past to engineer that change, but people have really got to start looking at it and going, no mother deserves to be in this position. And I know he's been there as your support, but I think sometimes often we forget that your husband is a father too, and that was his son too.
God, Tom, they were two peas. But you
Yeah.
keep saying, I'll just pull you up on this. No mother should be in this situation. No autistic person or a person with a learning disability
Yeah.
should be in that situation. Don't worry about me.
Hmm.
Don't worry about us. Worry about them. They're the ones going through it. They're the ones that are faced with this bias and prejudice. Let's think about those people that are in these care hospitals, these care homes. These atrocities that we're hearing about, the ones that are abused.
Hmm.
Don't think about me as a mum. Think about them, because what they live through and what their daily lives are must be absolutely horrific.
Absolutely.
And another thing to think of, Paul, and I go off tangents all the time, think about this. This is what's being done to them. They're not doing this to themselves. This is actually staff, us, not personally, but this is stuff that's being done to them. This abuse, this lack of care. And that's what we need to stop and think, the reality of what this is all about. Somebody somewhere right now will have had a smack in the face. There's lots of campaign groups, Rightful Lives. And I'll mention Julie's son. I think she runs I think he had a broken jaw. One of them had a broken femur. And that was done to them. And you think, come on, we cannot allow this. Even if it's not us, it's our colleagues that have done that. Mm-hmm. And we've got to bring them on that journey to bring about real change.
I often say this myself, when you see panorama programs coming out and people will say, yeah, the problem is the media only shows the negative. Now, no one is disputing that there are some amazing facilities out there and there is some amazing care staff, but that doesn't allow us to plead ignorance to the fact of, well, it's not me, so I don't have to worry about it. It's within our industry. It does happen. There is some people working within health and social care that, quite frankly, should not be working within health and social care. And it's up to us as managers, leaders, whoever we may be, fellow colleagues and peers, to discover them and to almost assist them out or make sure that they are not prevalent to it. Because the person that threw the punch to break a jaw, irrespective of what was going on within their life at that moment in time, you are in the wrong job. No one is, I've often said this, no one has the right to tell me how much I should care. But why would I put myself in a job of caring if I'm not naturally a caring type of person? And that's it. You're not sort of saying everybody should be able to do this job. No, they shouldn't. It takes patience. It takes consideration. It takes a heck of a lot of hours of working. You are potentially going to get at times assaulted yourself or abused yourself, but you have chosen that career because you want to make a difference. And if you don't want to make a difference, don't choose that career.
Exactly. Go somewhere else. You've got to be able to see the person and see that person's distressed. It's not personal. It's not personal. I do have an issue where I do know an awful lot of people do a fantastic job. Of course they do. But I am also very aware, and this comes to me a lot, people whistleblow, and yet things don't change. And again, this is that culture and that senior management, senior leaders, private organisations. Why are things not changing? Why are these people still allowed to be employed? This is greater than Oliver's training, but this is something that's got to be addressed. Honestly, like I've said, a lot of these organisations are receiving an awful lot of money from the government. Whistleblowers are coming to me. They're telling me about what's happening, and it falls on deaf ears. And I don't know how to address that. I know CQC are meant to go in and sort these things out. I'm hearing from these people, CQC look at it, but they don't always see it. And you're just thinking, again, this is a culture that's got to be addressed. But there's only so much I can do as a person.
Absolutely. And there's many other people out there. And it probably leads nicely to something else I was going to say. There is certain people in life who get so motivated by seeing something that isn't right, whether it affects them personally or whether it is motivated through other ways, that they cannot sleep at night without actually saying something or doing something about it. And I would say that that's a very small percentage of society. The rest of society will look at it and go, it's not affecting me. But we've got to look at it and go, the people that have engineered change throughout our whole history, which is why I started at the beginning with saying sort of like heroic attributes that you've had, and you won't see it. You will never see it in the same way that nobody else does. But to infiltrate change, you have to stand against the masses. You rhymed off names of people that have supported you. The mere fact that you can rhyme off names and you got 70,000+ signatures on the petition, that's a minuscule amount. That if every single person had heard your story and seen how wrong it was, what Oliver went through, what others have gone through, everybody would have signed that petition. That's the problem, is that you're one person trying to get your message out there, and you often need it to catch fire in order for it to go across masses to develop that change. And that's the bit that people don't see in all this. And before I get to the training, I really want to make this point. Most people would have stopped. You didn't. You pushed it through. You got it legislated, right? It's now getting rolled out. So I'd love to just spend a moment. Some people would turn around and go, I did it. But that's not enough, is it?
No, because I haven't done it.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. So I take little things off as I go along. So first of all, I had, petition. It then had to go to Parliament to be debated. It then had to go to the House of Lords to be pushed through. Thank you to Baroness Sheila Hollands, who I've not mentioned, because without her, it wouldn't have happened. So Sheila really pushed this, and she's been a huge support. Alongside, again, I'll mention Gillian Keegan. Then you've got to make sure then that what does the training look like? Is it fit for purpose? The evaluation, tick, we're there. Then we've been working towards the code of practice. People don't realise the work that's gone into that code of practice. Initially, when it was written, it was very, very weak. I wouldn't accept that. There was absolutely no way on this earth I would accept that. Neither would those. So people with lived experience were on all of those panels. And together as a team, we work so hard. Every step of the way. So the design of the training has had people, autistic people, learning disabled people leading the way on that. They had the biggest voices. Then the evaluation, again, lived experience, and then all those other things. So it's all been tick, tick, tick. We've got this far, the evaluation. Then we got this. So many people tried to stop it along the way. Then we've had to get to, like I said, the code of practice. That's been a nightmare to get where it is. It took years, I will say years, to get it as strong as it was. It's been bounced between lawyers, back to us, because we wouldn't accept it. We pushed hard for shoulds change to musts because it needed to be right. So it's been, honestly, the work involved in just that code of practice has been really hard. So that's done. We're where we are now. Now we've got to make sure that health and care staff are doing the right thing and rolling out Oliver's training. In doing so, I've got to make sure that actually we've got to look at the longevity, the sustainability. Are they doing it in the right way? Are they outsourcing the training? Are they going out to providers that are charging the earth? People that are making a killing out of Oliver's training, actually taking advantage, when in actual fact, there's better ways of doing it. So I'm looking at all of those things. Well, Oliver's training's got to be accredited because that's in keeping with the law. Any training has to be accredited now. And obviously it's the capability frameworks and all of those things. All of that work that you've mentioned, I've had to become well-versed in that, and that wasn't my line of work. So the next step now is, we've got a huge meeting tomorrow, which I'm speaking at, and that's all the stakeholders, all the ICB leads. They've all been given quite a bit of funding from the government, and it's seeing how they can use that funding to meet what they're supposed to be doing in train the trainers, getting all of us training what it needs to be. Like I said, there's more meetings coming up with skills for care for the care sector, looking at the code of practice and how they can meet that, and obviously funding that's being given by the government. So for me, the eye is on looking at how people are doing it and helping them, trying to work with them to say, actually, you're making it harder than it needs to be. It's not that hard. I promise you, it's not as hard as it needs to be. People put problems that doesn't need to be problems there. So it's working with that, because as you've just said, it's about making sure this is ongoing after I'm dead, because I don't know what's around the corner with me anyway. It's making sure that happens and enabling our care providers to be able to do that.
In terms of the training, so we've got the tier 1, we've got the tier 2. And there's a lot of conversations going on about. By the way, I actually, something you said there, I thought That is so right. And that is, this should not be looked at. There should be nobody capitalizing out of this. I think that's a big thing, which is why the funding streams are so important.
It's always been not for profit. Biggest cost is actually paying our experts with lived experience. And don't forget, that's giving them jobs. This is employing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had a few actually come to me. I know I'm diverting again, where they'd said they thought they were unemployable. The years they tried to get a job, and for the first time they've got a job through Oliver's training, and they can stand up in front of people. They thought they said, I'd never been heard. I felt worthless. And they said, people are now listening. I'm doing this training. They feel hope. And I genuinely mean that. I'm not making any of this up. All of this is coming to me. And you're just like, it's so much more than training. It's giving people the employment, paid employment. It's taking them off benefits, some of them. So honestly, it just goes on. And for those that complain and look at it in a negative way, step back and just look at the bigger picture. And
I hadn't looked at that myself. Obviously, I knew the process and how it was going through. But you're absolutely right. You're changing lives. It's not just about having a voice. It's not just about giving the care staff the skills. This thing has such a breadth of positivity around it and potential. And I think that's the bit where it wasn't a case of, oh, let's just do a training course and that suffices it. No, you are absolutely giving all people, an opportunity to be heard, to be seen, to be employed, and to be skilled.
To have a purpose in life. And we need to work together collaboratively. Care organisations, because we've got to be honest about money and time. Time is time. You've got to give out your staff the time to do this training. But funding and money. You've got to look at better ways of rolling out Oliver's training. You've got to meet the law. Whether you do Oliver's training or not, it's a mirror copy of it. So you've got to look at better ways. For me, I would say look at your own organisation and look and see if you can roll it out or collaborate with other organisations. See if you can do it yourselves. Go on Train the Trainer course. Employ people within your own organisation, your autistic colleagues, people with a learning disability. If you need to employ people, look out to your local schools and colleges. Oliver went to mainstream school for a while. Lots of people like Oliver are in the colleges. Start looking. Start offering employment opportunities to these young people as well. And obviously the older generations. There's better and easier ways of rolling out Tier 2 than you think. So just start thinking outside the box.
I think that's it. Do you know what? If we get the opportunity again and you're up for it, I think that's a separate podcast on its own to look at those opportunities. So I think a lot of people would be very interested to see what they are, because right now they're getting fed to them, if you like, one direction.
There's so many misunderstandings and misconceptions. I hear a lot from the care sector where they think they only have to do Tier 1. You've actually not completed Oliver's training. If you are required to do Tier 2, you've not completed it. If you've got to do Tier 1, that's the staff who are not public facing. You've still got to do the live webinar for that. Others have to do Tier 2. You cannot just do Tier 1. You will not have completed Oliver's training unless you've done both tiers. So a lot of people coming to me think they've got to just do Tier 1. They don't seem to know where to go for the training. And this is where the local ICBs have got to step up, because your ICBs cover, don't they, the care sector? Of course they do. They've had a substantial, and I'm going to be honest about it, they've had a substantial amount of money given to them. They should be supporting you with this. They should be. They've got to do far more. And that money can only be spent on the Oliver McGowan mandatory training. It cannot be spent anywhere else. So the care sector needs to be better supported at this moment in time. And I don't think you are. People can also enable themselves by looking on the website as well. The website contains the Oliver McGowan mandatory training website from NHS England. That contains a wealth of information of how you can do things. So I am aware by some of the questions that come to me. And I think that's all on the website. It's basic questions that are being asked. Yeah, I would encourage people to do that. But I
think sorry to interrupt, but when you started speaking there, it kind of like a little bit of emotion, but a smile appeared on my face, because I thought, bloody hell, she's fighting for us now in the care sector. It's like we're going after where is all the money going? How has it been spent? How has it been dispersed to get this training? I think I think people certainly within my industry have got to realize it's not a war or a fight. We want this, we need this, let's get this.
I'm here for you, and I want to work with you, and I want to be able to work together to be able to enable you to be able to complete and do Oliver's training in the best way that you can. We can't get around the fact that you've got to do face-to-face, you've got to do it. You can't get around the fact that you've got to release staff for training. That's their right, and you should be doing that. But what I can do is work with you to look at better ways of doing it. More affordability, longevity, sustainability. And it's about talking and all speaking together. And that is happening in that meeting tomorrow with the ICBs and the stakeholders. Like I said, we need some of them for you, don't we? We did have a lot of...
You are a formidable lady. As we mentioned pre-podcast, we were talking about, because Paul is obviously a Liverpudlian, and so is my mother. And I honestly, you just don't mess with them. It's as simple as that. The geared towards it, it's happening. Nothing's going to stop you. Nothing has stopped you. Nothing will continue to stop you. You have that. When I first started this podcast, it was very much about looking behind the scenes of people who've done amazing things in life, but you only get to see the Instagram picture. You don't get to see the work that goes into it. The power that's coming out of you without you even saying it is you are that absolute relentless person, because to me, you are powered by something much more motivational than anybody can have. And that is, it's almost like an anger at first that turned into, well, what can we do about this?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I don't use the word anger. I think it's almost like I've detached Oliver to enable me to do what I do. But Oliver's always with me. Before I came on this podcast, he's behind me there. Yeah. And actually, I'll be honest, I look at him and I go, come on, Oliver, help me out here. Because, I'll say to your audience, Paul, Paul and I discussed this cancer treatment at the moment is affecting me, and I do get a lot of word retrieval problems. And I was worried about doing it, if I'm honest, because I didn't know because none of this is rehearsed. We didn't know what you were going to, I didn't know what you were going to talk about. But I do turn to Oliver a lot, and I do ask him to help. In the beginning, anger didn't really come into it. It's not that. It's a clear sense of right and wrong. It's this clear, it really is. It's about what happened to Oliver and the people that did what they did to Oliver. That's one side. I don't go in there. That's in that box that doesn't get opened. So that's left. Now and again, you will see I will mention the doctor who administered that medication, because it's there, and it comes out usually around the time of now. And I can't run away from that. So obviously, I do run away from all that's happening. This comes from this sense of, again, I'll bring it back to our staff deserve to be given the right training, meaningful training that has impact and will bring about real change. The most important people are Oliver, are our autistic communities, our learning disabled communities. That's where my drive and determination comes from. Like I said, I was a bit stung last week. I mean, they say they were doctors apparently, but anyway, we'll see. Question of why she got an OBE and the vileness and the nastiness. And I have to pull my big girl pants up and say, stop it. It's not about you. That's their anger. Don't get angry back. That's their problem. It's a them problem. It's not a you problem. Step away from them.
Let me tell you why you got an OBE, and that was going to be one of my last questions. But let me tell you why you got one. Because of every email that you've received from people to say thank you, to say you've advocated for us, you've changed things, you've made a difference in my loved one's life. That's why you got the OBE, because you are someone that has made such an impact at a point where others could have just almost become, and this is a horrible word to use, but almost become like, I give up on life myself. You didn't. You embraced life and you went, Oliver's name will not be in vain. Oliver's death will not be in vain.
I think that's what means a lot. That means far more. To be honest, when I got that OBE, somebody mentioned to me one day, OBE, Oliver behind. The OBE it's for him. It's not for me. I don't want it, but it's for Oliver. Everything I do is for Oliver.
And what would he have thought about his mum getting an OBE?
Honestly, he'd have laughed. He had this amazing laugh, Oliver. I can hear him now. We quite often mention that laugh. And he'd find it funny. He'd be proud. He'd be really, really proud. But Oliver was a lot like me in lots of ways. You know, when he was in, even, do you know, I'm going to tell you a story now, and it's sad, but it's also, this is who Oliver was. Back in that children's hospital, when they gave him those medications and he was really compromised, it was horrible. He was drooling from his mouth. It was really horrible. Like I said, Oliver presented like this all the time, very aware of himself, very smart. And there was a young lad, and he was really compromised. He was a young boy with a learning disability, and he was crying a lot. He had cancer and so on and so on. In between these spells, Oliver went into that lad's room. The boy wouldn't take his medication. And Oliver, with God's honest truth, Oliver went in and sat on that bed with him and got him to take his medication. And one of the nurses came out crying. I swear to you, this is the truth. She came out crying. And she said, I can't believe, makes me tear up now, I can't believe Oliver did that when he was so poorly himself at the time. Oliver is, I think he's the same. When he went to National Star College in Cheltenham, that's all written down as well. They were telling us how he was always supporting students less able than himself. That's who he was, a real keen sense of right and wrong. So I'm just Oliver's voice now, because, you know, you'll go, no, but I couldn't be Oliver's voice when he was alive. Well, I couldn't be his voice when he was alive, so I'm now his voice when he's dead.
It's been an absolute honour and a privilege. I as much as you were nervous around coming on to this in relation to, you know, your current situation, I was even more nervous about meeting you, because you're sort of, you know, their stories, everything like that. This formidable person. You're absolutely genuinely amazing person. You are. And whether that is through Oliver's voice, your voice, or every single person's voice is needed to be heard. I think the world, because it's not just the UK now, because I see this has been adopted internationally as well. You just won't. You won't let it. You won't stop at one country.
I've done the same in Australia. I've spoken at the Australian Royal Commission. I've spoken in Geneva. I do a lot of this. You know, when I said I'm presenting most nights, it's to other countries as well. So there's a lot going on. I'm also I do a lot of research papers. So, and I'm also the patron for different charities. So I'm doing stuff for them. So it's busy. It's busy.
The world needs people like you. It does. Right. Paula, is there anything that I mean, your wish would be that we just get on with the training as the infrastructure and start to make that be the catalyst to change? Yeah?
Absolutely. I just want it to be, you know, honestly, I'm getting tired. I just want it where Oliver's training is rolled out. Everybody's embraced it. Everybody's just doing it. We're making changes. And I can step aside then and just look on from a distance and say, it's happening. It's done. It's done. But we're nowhere near that yet. That's what I want to happen. I want to be able to stop and just know that it's happening. It's working.
Paula, I absolutely appreciate you. We've taken up almost an hour and a half of your time on this, and I am so grateful to you for giving that time, because I think so many people are going to watch this and listen to this and come away with it with a different viewpoint. I do. Even if it's the viewpoint was already the right one, it's going to become much more of a topic of agenda on discussions and meetings, etc., like that are not just around how do we do this. It's going to be more a case of we need to do it. Which way are we doing it? And that's the key. So, is there anywhere that you've mentioned about websites, etc., like that? So, is there particular websites that you would recommend that people go to?
Well, I'd have to look at my phone to get the right. It's the official NHS England one for the Oliver McGowan mandatory training.
Yeah.
Go there. If you want to know a little bit about Oliver, there's Oliver's campaign website as well. That's just all the personal stuff, really. But really, information that you need to know about, go to the NHS England Oliver McGowan mandatory training. If you type that in anyway, it will all come up. But there's loads of questions, answers. It's all the legislative stuff. The code of practice is on there. I'm sure all the leaders must have the code of practice by now. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, all that information's there. Reach out to your local ICBs as well. They should be helping and supporting you. They really should. I know it's not happening all the time, which we won't even go into because that makes me angry. But again, we've got to work together.
Okay, I'm sure we will put lots of links and things like that into the comments page of that, so that you can get hold of this information. I think it's been a phenomenal time. If you've listened to this and you've got questions that come off the back of it, if you put them into the comment section underneath the actual post when it goes out, I'm sure if there's any that are particularly needed for Paula's expertise to look at, or she can give guidance, then we can reach out to Paula and she will help us formulate the right answer to you. This is so important. It's why we wanted to do this. We don't want it to be the topic of the month. This is a topic of the future, and it needs to remain that way. And it starts now. Paula started this 9 years ago. We've got the legislation, you've got the policy change. It's mandated. It's now a case of getting on and getting it done. Even at that point, just remember this: a training course, and I'm saying this as an educator, a training course is designed to plant seeds and set off light bulbs. It doesn't bring about change. Change happens when you adopt it into your service and say, these are our values, this is our objectives, this is how we work, we will take the skills that people have learned and we will change who we are as people, who we are as a service, and we will ensure that we actually start to give every single voice the opportunity to be heard, listened, and cared for. And I think that's the key. There's building blocks. Paula has created the first building block, and as she said, she just wants to get that there and then watch the snowball effect happen from there. And I'm sure at that point she'll say, you can get on with it now. I can rest. Paula, any closing remarks from yourself?
Well, my closing remark is every single one of you have the ability to make a difference. You've got to have it within your own hearts and in your own minds to do what you need to do, not because you're told to, but actually what you need to do and what you actually yourself wants to do. And that's to make a difference to these communities that you are caring for. So that's my advice.
Beautiful words to close. Okay, you've been listening to Behind the Briefcase. If you've watched this episode and you like it, please hit the subscribe. Please send it out to other people and share it out. Important messages here. Share it out. Don't have to be just people that work in health and social care. Every industry, every person. Give them the chance to hear this story. Give them the chance to hear the commitment that is taken to get to where we are right now, just to get to now, and what we need to do for the future. So please share this one out. I ask that openly. Friends, family, whoever, work colleagues, share it. And we'll be back in the next couple of weeks with another phenomenal guest, no doubt. Who's going to beat this one? It's going to be tough. Thank you very much and take care of yourself. Have a good week, everyone. And I'll speak to you soon.